It would be unthinkable for any functioning democracy. But Canada has achieved the unthinkable today, giving free run to a bunch of thugs who protested outside Indian consulates across Canada, including Toronto and Vancouver. These ragtag bunch of so-called Khalistani activists chanted anti-India slogans, desecrated our Indian flag, and attacked the poster of the Prime Minister in the most vile fashion, spitting at it, beating it up with chappals. But I suppose all of this is covered under free speech for the Canadian Prime Minister. For a moment, one almost thought that yesterday that honouring and applauding a Nazi soldier inside the Canadian House of Commons was also a part of this free speech doctrine. However, after all-round condemnation and shocked outrage from the Jewish community, Canada did everything. But even here, guess what? Mr. Trudeau decided to blame everyone but himself for this major gaffe.
Obviously, it's extremely upsetting that this happened. The speaker has acknowledged his mistake and has apologized. But this is something that is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and, by extension, to all Canadians. I think particularly of Jewish MPs and all members of the Jewish community across the country who are celebrating commemorating Yom Kippur today. I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and continue our steadfast and unequivocal support for Ukraine, as we did last week with announcing further measures to stand with Ukraine in Russia's illegal war against it.
That was a small aside, but let's get back to the main story now about the protests by the Khalistanis. It must be said that this so-called mass mobilization in Canada turned out to be a damn squib. Despite people like Padmaja Joshi giving a call to shut down Indian consulates across the country, all that they could actually manage is a sundry 40 to 50 men hitting the streets with flags of Khalistan and chanting. The question, though, is why? Why is speech and action against India's sovereignty given free run like this? And it doesn't end there. Right now, you saw the so-called Khalistanis. Now see actual gangsters who have been sheltered in Canada and continue to carry out their criminal actions. Essentially, ladies and gentlemen, here is what is happening. In the name of Khalistan, there is a nexus of petty thugs, politicians and criminals who have fled from India, who are all taking shelter currently on Canadian soil. Among these worthies is a man called Talwinder Singh Parmar, alias Lakhbir Landa. He escaped India in 2016, not because he was fighting some great cause of Khalistan. He is charged with offences like murder, attempt to murder, kidnapping, drug running. Currently, he is in Edmonton, Canada, and while there, he continues to run a drug and extortion network. In fact, Times now has in its possession an actual audio recording of Landa while he is threatening somebody to cough up money. And all of this is happening while Canada turns a blind eye. Listen.
Hello. हाँ वीर किदा मेरा भरा ठीक ठाक है लंडा बोलने हरी गया तो मेरा भरा मैं ਭੱਜਦਾ ਫਿਰਦਾ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਂਦਾ ਫਿਰਦਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਪੈਸੇ ਮੰਗੇ ਜੇ ਤੇ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਫੋਨ ਲਾਇਆ ਤੇਰਾ ਹੈ ਸਾਰੀ ਡਿਟੇਲ ਹੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਤੇਰੀ ਵੀ ਤੇਰੇ ਭਰਾ ਬਲਜੀਤ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਤੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਭਰਾ ਹੁਣ ਤੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਪੈਸੇ ਲੈਣੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਵੀ ਢੰਡੋਰਾ ਫਿਰਦਾ ਤੇ ਭੱਜ ਲੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਭੱਜਣਾ ਹੀ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਸੁਣਾ ਲਈ ਪਹਿਲੋਂ ਤਾਂ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਨੇ ਫੋਨ ਲਾਇਆ ਹੋਣਾ ਪੈਸੇ ਵਾਲੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਕੇ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਜੇ ਨਿਬੇੜਨਾ ਆਇਆ ਨਿਬੇੜ ਲਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਤੇ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਵੀ ਚਿਰ ਭੱਜੇਗਾ ਪੁੱਤ ਫਿਰ ਦੋਵਾਂ ਚੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਦਾ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੂਜੇ ਤੋਂ ਲਾਉਂਗਾ ਹੁਣ ਦੋਵਾਂ ਨੇ ਰਲ ਕੇ ਦੇਣੇ ਤੇ ਤਾਂ ਵੇਖ ਲਿਓ ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਲਾ ਲਈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਭੱਜਣਾ ਹੀ ਭੱਜ ਲਈ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਬਾਅਦ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨਾਲ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਵੈਰ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਉਂਗਲ ਦੇਣੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਜੇ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਬਚਾ ਲੈਣਗੇ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਦਾ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਲਾ ਲਾ ਤੂੰ ਓਕੇ ਹੈਲੋ ਹਾਂ ਵੀਰ ਕਿੱਦਾਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਭਰਾ ਠੀਕ ਠਾਕ ਹੈ ਲੰਡਾ ਬੋਲਣੇ ਹਰੀ ਗਿਆ ਤੋਂ ਤੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਭਰਾ ਐਵੇਂ ਭੱਜਦਾ ਫਿਰਦਾ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਂਦਾ ਫਿਰਦਾ ਮੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਪੈਸੇ ਮੰਗੇ ਜੇ ਤੇ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਫੋਨ ਲਾਇਆ ਤੇਰਾ ਹੈ ਸਾਰੀ ਡਿਟੇਲ ਹੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਤੇਰੀ ਵੀ ਤੇਰੇ ਭਰਾ ਬਲਜੀਤ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਤੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਭਰਾ ਹੁਣ ਤੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਪੈਸੇ ਲੈਣੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਵੀ ਢੰਡੋਰਾ ਫਿਰਦਾ ਤੇ ਭੱਜ ਲੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਭੱਜਣਾ ਹੀ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਸੁਣਾ ਲਈ ਪਹਿਲੋਂ ਤਾਂ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਨੇ ਫੋਨ ਲਾਇਆ ਹੋਣਾ ਪੈਸੇ ਵਾਲੇ ਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਕੇ ਫੋਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਜੇ ਨਿਬੇੜਨਾ ਆਇਆ ਨਿਬੇੜ ਲਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਤੇ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਵੀ ਚਿਰ ਭੱਜੇਗਾ ਪੁੱਤ ਫਿਰ ਦੋਵਾਂ ਚੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਦਾ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੂਜੇ ਤੋਂ ਲਾਉਂਗਾ ਹੁਣ ਦੋਵਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੇ ਦੇਣੇ ਤੇ ਤਾਂ ਵੇਖ ਲਿਓ ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਲਾ ਲਈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਭੱਜਣਾ ਹੀ ਭੱਜ ਲਈ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਬਾਅਦ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨਾਲ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਵੈਰ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਉਂਗਲ ਦੇਣੀ ਦੇਣੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਬਾਕੀ ਜੇ ਤੈਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਬਚਾ ਲੈਣਗੇ ਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਆਪਦਾ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਲਾ ਲਾ ਤੂੰ ਓਕੇ
And that's why over the last 2 weeks, the image of Canada has taken a serious beating. From Nazis to Khalistanis to gangsters, it is seen as a mitra of all unsavory elements possible. The question is, what is the compulsion and for how long can this be carried on? In fact, India and its allies like Bangladesh and Sri Lanka have already decided to clap back in no uncertain terms.
Yeah, we have always suffered, and some of the terrorists have found safe haven in Canada. Canadian Prime Minister has this way of just coming out with some outrageous allegations without any supporting proof. The same thing they did for Sri Lanka, a terrible total lie about saying that Sri Lanka had a genocide. Everybody knows there was no genocide in our country. And I saw yesterday he had gone and given a rousing welcome to somebody who have associated with the Nazis in the past on the Second World War. So I'm not surprised that sometime Prime Minister Trudeau comes out with outrageous, unsubstantiated allegations.
We believe, we are very proud of India because they don't do immature things. We have a very solid relationship with India, and these are based on values and principles. So this is a sad episode. I hope this should end up amicably.
In fact, today speaking at the United Nations, the External Affairs Minister also gave a veiled message to Canada without naming it. Is there now going to be an international condemnation of these actions by Canada? Joining us, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Senior Fellow at the IPCS, Jerma Carson, political columnist at the National Post. But my first question is to Mr. Ward Elcock, who's the former director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. Mr. Elcock, given the kind of people who are currently operating in Canada, people who attack the Indian flag, people who raise Khalistani slogans, people who are carrying out a criminal network, what would you say about those who say that Canada is the new Pakistan?
I think that's pretty silly, frankly, and I found most of the lead-in fairly unbalanced, to say the least. The reality is there are criminals in Canada, as there are in every country, including, I'm sure, India, and they have to be dealt with periodically, but they have to be dealt with in accordance with the law. Not by some extrajudicial, not in some extrajudicial manner. Most of the accusations I've heard so far are really pretty specious.
What would you say about that? Abhijit Iyer Mitra, do you think that it is usual, the kind of activity, the kind of recordings, people like Landa, people like Nijjar who are in Canada, people like these exist in India as well, says Mr. Elcock?
Yes, but you see...
That's not what I said, actually, but never mind.
No, you said that similarly there would be criminals in any country, including India.
Yes, there are, but that's not what you said.
Okay, let me ask you a follow-up question then. There are documented cases of how India has given at least details of 14 people who are currently sheltered in Canada. There are red corner notices against them. They have been called terrorists. Their name and information is with the Canadian government, request for deportation, but none of that has happened. You think that also is usual?
I don't know those specific requests, and I'm sure you probably don't have access to all of the information either, whatever you've been provided. Having said that, if the government of Canada has legitimate and credible information, I'm sure it would act upon it. However, the Minister of Public Safety has said on at least one occasion when I heard him in respect of information provided by India that the information was insufficient for the purposes for which it was advanced.
Okay, Abhijit, please respond to this, and I will actually put out details of that. Yes.
You know, this is the kind of tosh that we always get from the Canadians. You go back to Terry Milevsky and what he says about, that entire investigation. CSIS was tracking the people who bombed AI-182. They did nothing about it. They botched the investigation after that. And now the one fellow who gets convicted for it also gets his sentence shortened. Now remember, that particular guy, Mr. Parmar, Indira Gandhi had requested his extradition on very credible grounds. And do you know what grounds Pierre Trudeau, the father of Justin Trudeau, denied it on? That Queen Elizabeth wasn't your head of state. So, you know, this is something the Canadians keep using. Their excuses are just as flimsy and specious as Pakistani excuses are. And we're not the only ones saying this. They literally have one of the murderers of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman hiding out somewhere there. They have several, and I say this being a Tamil, they have several extortionists hiding out there. It was one of the primary funding sources for the LTTE. Now, it's a bit rich to say that they're Pakistan because they're not providing them with arms, but are they clueless? Yes. Are they deliberately clueless because of their internal identity politics of the trashy kind that Justin Trudeau practices? Yes.
Mr. Elcock, do you want to respond to that? And just a quick reminder that Abhijit Iyer Mitra is talking about 73-year-old Noor Chaudhary, who is a convicted fugitive in Bangladesh. There are multiple conversations between Sheikh Hasina and Mr. Trudeau where she has said the man participated in 2 massacres in Bangladesh in 1975 and has since hid in Canada. And for the last 4 decades, Canada hasn't moved to send him back. He's a convicted war criminal. He has killed children, including a 12-year-old boy.
I'm sure that that is a much more complicated case, frankly, than you are suggesting. The reality being that Bangladesh is hardly a democratic country at the end of the day. I would only say in response to those comments is that they're certainly obviously everybody is entitled to their personal view. I obviously don't agree with those comments, and they're really not based on reality.
Mr. Elcock, leave aside these convicted criminals. Do you think that it falls in the ambit of free speech to have posters seeking the assassination of Indian diplomats put up in gurdwaras, and today morning to have people parading the streets of Toronto screaming death to the Prime Minister of India and denigrating our flag?
I am sure there are many demonstrators who have denigrated the Canadian flag, and there are probably some demonstrators who have on some occasions called for Mr. Trudeau's demise. It's not all that unusual.
Aren't you a country with the rule of law or whatever Justin Trudeau said? I mean, we're a third world country. Forget about us. We're a third world country. Forget about us. But you claim to be a first world country with the rule of law, right? So your comeback is, oh, it's also done in India.
Sorry, what? I can't hear you.
Yeah, this Padmaja is a former head of CSIS. I rest my case.
So the simple issue is, do you think that this is within the ambit of free speech to call for the assassination of diplomats? And those posters, by the way, were up for 3 months. 3 months. While India said that there is a direct threat to the safety and life of our diplomats, those posters were never taken down because they were at a gurudwara.
I am sure that if there were any real threats to the safety of diplomats in Canada, that would have been investigated and security would have been provided. I'm sure there is adequate security provided for the Indian mission here in Ottawa. In fact, it's just down the street from where I live.
Okay, since you spoke about the kind of evidence that we have put out, let me actually also bring in Abhijit Iyer Mitra and you on this and give some of the details. So who are the people on whom information has been given by India to Canada? This is not, by the way, credible allegations. This is information and evidence in black and white. Goldie Barar, involved in 15+ criminal cases. Deportation has already been requested. That is the first man. The next person is Lakhbir Landa, mastermind behind the RPG attack on the intelligence headquarters in Punjab, the Punjab state of India. His deportation has also been requested. Nothing has happened so far. Arsh Dalla, do you know that 2 weeks ago, a Congress leader was shot dead in the state of Punjab in India? This man has taken responsibility for it. 16+ criminal cases. He continues to be in Canada. Deportation has been requested. Nothing has happened. Rinku Randhawa, 18+ criminal cases. Deportation requested. Gurwant Singh, he's involved in terror-related incidents. The case against him has carried on since the 1990s. Red corner notice has been issued, deportation requested, and nothing has happened. India has done everything by the straight and narrow, Mr. Elcock. You would appreciate being a senior former intelligence officer yourself. Surely we can't do anything more. We have given you the pictures. We have given you the information. We have issued a red corner notice. We have sought deportation. What stops Canada from acting now?
As I said earlier, obviously I'm no longer the director of CSIS and have not been for a few years. And in any case, CSIS is not involved in criminal matters. It's involved in issues of terrorism rather than gangs and criminal activities. The reality is, if the only comment I can add at this point is that the Minister of Public Safety was clear that the information, whatever you say, and whatever information you have, the information that India actually provided was insufficient for the purposes for which it was advanced. If information is not provided that is usable in a Canadian court, then ultimately it will not be we will not be successful in taking action against somebody here in Canada.
Well, that sounds eerily similar, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, to some other country which had called the evidence we gave them a piece of paper.
Look, I mean, this gentleman sounds like the head of the ISI. You know, I can't believe this man headed the intelligence service of an alleged first world country when he doesn't know that crime and terrorism are fungible. You know, the thing about terrorism is what funds terrorism? It's organized crime. Sometimes organized, sometimes
That's
disorganized, but it's things like, excuse me, I'm talking now. I didn't interrupt you. Thank you. So this man is essentially telling you exactly what the Pakistan chiefs of the ISI have been telling you for the last few years. Why do you think Pakistan is where it is today? What do you think funded terrorism in Kashmir? You're seeing those exact same drug gangs play out. And you know, the surprising thing here is the Khalistan movement isn't a terror movement anymore. There is no terror happening here. What's happening is gun crimes and drugs. Remember, Punjab has the highest addiction rates anywhere in India. It is an organized drug cartel. And the problem is they use political jargon to shield themselves. You know, because you won't get protection for drugs or guns. You will get protection if you raise the Khalistani flag. So they hide their crimes under this whole Khalistan label. And I mean, I don't need to say anything, Padmaja. I think we should just let Mr. Elcock talk because he's kind of making my point for me.
All right, I'm just going to leave it at that. But Mr. Elcock, with the greatest of respect, the people who are in this criminal activity surely can't just be directing all of their energies at India and at Punjab. At some point, they're also going to start spreading their network in the places where they live and where they are sheltered. Let's hope better sense prevails. Thanks very much, both gentlemen, for joining me.